5:15, so we're gonna get Vespers started, but before we do, just wanted to let the future 2036 CIT Madeline say hello. She has a lot more to say, but we're gonna let her say it at another time. Thanks so much for joining. It's a real honor to get to give Vespers today. For those who don't know me, my name is Ben Mark. I spent 12 summers at Coniston between 1999 and 2012. I was a 2003 CIT and a 2010 West Coast CIT director. I even took 2 weeks of vacation from my job in 2012 to come back to be a West Coast trip leader. And I'd do it again, but then I'd have to explain to my wife and to Madeline about my plan to take a vacation without them. I just don't think that would go over as well these days. The three of us live in Milton, Massachusetts, and I work for an education technology company in Boston with 2 other Constant alumni, actually. For today's Vespers, I want to take you back, or for many of you who have never been before, I just want to simply take you to January of 1999. I was 12 years old at that time and in 7th grade, and I was counting down the days to go back for my 3rd summer of overnight camp. I know most or all of you have been there. It's the dead of winter, and there's probably triple digits on the calendar to get back to camp, but you are counting those days down. Or if you were a kid in the early 2000s, you were on the Coniston.org chat rooms like I know I was. But I was counting down the days in January of 1999, 12 years old, 7th grade. And I was to go back to overnight camp, but that camp actually wasn't Coniston. It was an all-boys camp just south of the White Mountains. And this camp's sun-splashed dining hall looked out over a beautiful lake. Almost all of its cabins actually had toilets and showers. Some of them even had carpets, but only for when you were older. And the previous summer, as an 11-year-old, I went to my first inter-camp social with a girls' camp across the lake. I had my first slow dance to the song All My Life by Casey and JoJo with a girl named Vanessa from Miami. And I had played on the camp's JV basketball and baseball teams, and I had been writing a pen pal named Brian who lived on Long Island and who had been in my cabin during my first 2 summers. I could not wait to go back. But on this January weekend, I came home from a basketball game to see my mom in the kitchen holding an open letter. And she walked with me into our living room, sat with me on the couch, and handed me the letter. It was from camp, and it wasn't good. This camp, which was set to celebrate its 100th anniversary in just a few years after 1999, it was closing for the indefinite future. There would be no summer camp for me that summer. I cried and cried and cried some more. What in the world would I do that summer? Where would I go? I'd never see Brian again or Vanessa. I was sure I would have made the varsity basketball team. All of it was gone. Winter turned to spring, and still I had no overnight summer plan that year. My mom would float the names of other camps that my friends from middle school attended, and I would just shake my head. Nothing would be as good as my camp had been. And then finally in May, growing a little desperate, my friend's mom told my mom that she had signed him up for 2 weeks at Camp Coniston. Now, before I go any further, let's just marinate on this for a minute. This was 21 years ago. May. There were open spots in May. I hear there are open spots in May now for 2030. Anyways, this was only 2 weeks, whereas my camp had been 4. If I hated it, I'd be home pretty quickly, I reasoned, and so I decided I would just go. When I showed up, I grumbled that the dining hall wasn't on the lake. None of the cabins had toilets or showers, and I wasn't going to get carpets when I got older. But it was camp, and I liked it enough, so I kept going back, and I won't bore you with the rest. Just like all of you, I fell in love with the place and the people, and the rest is history. Coniston was the greatest thing that ever happened to me as a kid, and I never would have found it if I hadn't gotten that devastating news that my expected summer was over before it had even begun. Now, I know for those of you who are campers and staff listening today, my story from '99 isn't completely analogous to yours. Camp closed for me, but just that one camp. But I will tell you, I did not want to go to Coniston that summer. I'm not sure what Coniston in 1999 is for you in 2020 over the next few months. Perhaps it's time unplugged with your family. Perhaps it's exploring new places close by for you to go hike, bike, run, or swim. Maybe it's a new TV series or a set of novels you never ever thought you'd enjoy. All I know is that there's something. keep an open mind, and go for it. I want to end actually in 2002 when I got a letter that my old camp had opened up again. And I want to tell you why, even at that point, I knew I'd never leave Coniston. On my last night ever at that old camp in 1998, we spent the evening much like we spend it at Coniston, watching fireworks explode over the lake. I was seated next to the JV basketball coach, the team I'd played on, one of the coolest counselors at camp, and a boy my age who was in that counselor's cabin and who was on the basketball team with me, one of the coolest kids at camp. I had really come into my own as a person that summer, and my confidence as a preteen was building. The night was perfect, and I turned to the two of them to let them know. This is what it's all about, I said, with a smile on my face. Their response was to laugh at me and call me a derogatory name that I won't repeat. And I loved that camp. But as I held the letter as a high school sophomore, I thought of how my friends and counselors at Coniston that I had made over the last 2 summers would have responded if and when I said something similar on the last night at Coniston. They probably would have thrown an arm around me or given me a hug and say, "You bet it is. I love you, bud." Both camps I went to were physically beautiful. They both had my favorite activities. The food at both of them was camp food, so, you know. But the connections I made with people at Coniston, they were real. In that respect, Coniston was beyond compare. And so I want to leave you with this. Whether you were supposed to be at camp this summer, or if you're my age or older, we can't make those connections physically with the people we love and care about, but we have the technology to do it. And so even though it's been a while now, 3 months or so, continue to just surprise someone by calling them, ride a bike over to a friend's house unannounced to tell them you care about them. Do what I've been trying to do at work, which is a virtual desk stop by, where I just pick up the phone, or we have like an inter-office communication thing called Slack, and I'll just call someone random who I haven't talked to in a while. Those are way better if you have a baby to bring with you. But if you don't have one, that's okay. You can borrow mine. Keep the spirit of Coniston alive by showing your friends that you care and you love them, because that's what makes it the best place on earth. Our virtual Vespers tradition is to take time to appreciate the people who have brought us into being. And so if you could take the next 30 seconds, as we do every week, to think about who in your life has helped make you the person you are today, we'll end that way. And thanks so much, everybody, for coming.